Forest is a really interesting fairy tale fantasy kind of retelling book that I picked up with the Cottagecore Fantasy Book Club. Now, I really enjoyed this because not only is it kind of built on the well-known fairy tale of Hansel and Gretel, but it explores some darker themes, including war, witchcraft, superstition, and all that kind of fun stuff. Now, the spin-off themes for this book shouldn't really be a surprise because Hansel and Gretel isn't exactly a walk in the park either. But what I really enjoyed is how Greta is transformed in this story to take on kind of the elements of witchcraft and finds herself in kind of a difficult position where she is as part of a small community who are superstitious of magic, but also she's very dependent on the other people around her in order to survive. So it's a really interesting dynamic, and it's one I will get to in more detail in just a few minutes. Before that though, let me get into kind of the details of the book. I'll give you a recap of the synopsis, and then I'll dive into my thoughts. Ginger, honey, cinnamon, flour. 20 years after the witch in the gingerbread house, Greta and Hans are struggling to get by. Their mother and stepmother are long dead. Hans is deeply in debt from gambling, and the countryside lies in ruin, its people starving in the aftermath of war. Greta has a secret though. The witch's grimoire, secreted away and whispering in Greta's ear for the past 2 decades, and the recipe inside that makes the best gingerbread you've ever tasted. As long as she can bake, Greta can keep her small family afloat. But in a village full of superstition, Greta, with her mysteriously addictive gingerbread, not to mention the rumours about her childhood misadventures, is a source of gossip and suspicion. And now dark magic is returning to the woods. And Greta's magic she is still trying to understand, may be the only thing that can save her, if it doesn't kill her first. Now, as fantasy books go, this is around 480 pages, so it's not it's not that small. It's also not really long either. It's a good balance for me in terms of having lots of world building and a story to really kind of dig into and get your teeth into. Excuse the pun. But it's also not overwhelming or doesn't drag out kind of thing for me. I know some people have said they thought this could be edited down a little, but I personally really enjoyed it, so each to their own. So I suppose getting into what I enjoyed most is exploring these kind of wider, darker themes that we do see in After the Forest. Now, I have been reading a few books based around witchcraft and kind of superstition lately, as well as After the Forest. I've also picked up the likes of The Three Witches, which is a more historical take, but it's about kind of telling the real story of women accused of witchcraft rather than the traditional narrative we know today. So it's a topic I already enjoy, but I also enjoyed it in the context of because almost set in like a European style country, where there's a lot of war going on, famine, resources are being taken to fuel the war, taxes increase, that sort of thing. So there is a lot of kind of negativity going on in the wider realm this book is set in. And then when you add the likes of kind of religious superstition and witchcraft into this tinderbox, I'm sure you can imagine it's not going to end well for someone. What's also really interesting about this story is that Greta polarizes some people. So whereas there are people who are maybe more willing to be kind of negative and mistrustful of her, allegedly because of her misadventures when she was younger, but also for what they believe she's doing now, there are equally people who try to use this to try and manipulate her to their advantage. So you have people trying to stay clear, you have people trying to take advantage, and bless her poor heart, she even had people trying to use it against her in order to gain their hand in marriage. So This world, unfortunately, is not safe for Greta, and whilst she has been somewhat reliant on living with her brother, Hans, for some form of protection at least, his getting in financial trouble himself has put her in a difficult position. It does not secure her future at all. And yeah, this is a kind of very gritty story to get into. So if you really enjoy kind of getting into a story where things aren't all light and fairies and, you know, all that great stuff, then After the Forest is going to tick those boxes for you. So magic in this world is something that is clearly frowned upon. And whilst we start the story knowing of Greta's ability to access magic, it turns out it's a little bit more kind of widespread throughout the narrative. So watching events unfold and seeing how actually magic plays a greater role in what's going on really kind of worked well for me. So we have other people who can access magic, including people she kind of trusted and maybe didn't suspect had some form of access to it anyway. We also have curses and kind of like negative magic, I suppose, going on that we need to unravel. So there is lots going on in this book. What starts as what we suspect is quite an isolated storyline actually turns out that in the small community there are more people with magic than maybe the wider community appreciates. Some of it also isn't perceived as great. For example, some of the magic that people can access to have ties to kind of threats of things going on and putting at risk the community's access to food and safety. So you can understand maybe why the wider community are fearful, especially with everything else going on, including the war as things stand. So it's a really interesting one. Again, sort of erring on the darker side. So if that's your cup of tea, then this one's for you. When we start this book, the overarching kind of theme of war is always kind of in the background. And as we progress, this becomes ever more kind of evident in what's happening. So it always feels like it's something going on, at least in the background to start with. And it's a common theme in fantasy, so it's probably not going to be anything that surprises you or something you're not familiar with. But it does end up becoming more relevant throughout the book. The inclusion of war feels somewhat relevant to modern day. Whilst it starts in the background kind of this book, it becomes more relevant towards the end, and obviously that's something we would never hope for here. But obviously with everything going on right now, we've got these influences of war already kind of touching other people and us, petrol prices especially, thanks Trump. But, it feels very much relatable that we know these things are going on in the background, and unfortunately this threat gets closer and closer and closer throughout this narrative. So it adds a lot of tension, as well as being generally quite a common kind of plot device in fantasy anyway. It didn't feel overdone. I think it was done in the right way, that it fit the overall vibe of this book. However, this book is not all doom and gloom. If you enjoy a romance element to your storylines, then you will not be disappointed with After the Forest. Greta struggles with her kind of general position in society as a woman, as potentially a woman maybe under suspicion of witchcraft. There is an element of escapism and a glimmer of hope, if you like, in a character she meets in the book. Somebody who would be of her choosing rather than being married off for financial gain or writing off debt, that sort of thing. So there is a positive element to this storyline, which if you love that kind of thing is going to be perfect. It's not something I actively seek out in my fantasy, but I did enjoy this slightly lighter note in quite a generally darker book. So After the Forest is a fun fairy tale retelling with a darker lens, but one I personally really enjoyed. Have you read After the Forest? Is it something you would be interested to pick up based on this review? Let me know in the comments, and I will catch you in my next long form video for a reading update on what I picked up this week. Until then, bye for now.